सबसे पहला सवाल, very very important question that we are all trying to understand is, sir, does a precedent even exist right now that equates the current 19 situation, the COVID-19 situation right now and its impact on business? Because everybody keeps using this word unprecedented. So in your understanding, has anything in the past happened that has had similar impacts on the economy and businesses?
So we've seen plenty of shocks in the past few years. I've gone through the whole 2008 Lehman moment, and I was right across the Lehman building. So I would say, yeah, I've seen it in some form, but I have never seen a supply and a demand shock simultaneously hitting the market. I think that's the first time that I have ever seen such a thing. And coupled with that, see, this is not a financial event. This is a health event, and it's impacting society as a whole.
Mhm.
So from that point of view, it's not that only one sector has been impacted, or the follow-on 2 or 3 sectors have been impacted. It's practically impacted anyone and everyone that we know about. So yeah, at that point of from taking things from that lens, yeah, this is one of the it's one of its kind.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the only point that I wanted to add to that is the fact that this is something that is happening everywhere around the world at the same time. So I think such a global crisis of sorts is something that, at least in my living memory, I haven't really recollected, nor have a lot of my peers as well.
That's right. That's right.
Uh, so on a personal front, Daman, how has COVID-19 impacted you as a professional, and of course the industry in which you operate in?
So, frankly, I like to think of myself first as an entrepreneur and second as a marketer. And I think on both sides, we've taken a huge hit. As an
Absolutely.
entrepreneur working with startups, the one resource that we have huge paucity of always is capital. I think we have the best of employees to work with. We've been privileged because startups are very sexy now. But capital has been of a huge constraint. And at times like this, we've really had to go back to the drawing board and figure out how do we utilize capital and how do we do resource allocation. An entrepreneur's job is to first and foremost have a vision, and second is to keep minimizing risk so that the company can grow. This is a black swan event, and none of us thought that it will be this bad. So we're all trying to figure out how do we work with limited capital, and second is also with funding is going to freeze up for the next few months at least. How do we make the best of this situation? Secondly, as a marketer, so with supply and demand both getting impacted, at times like this, all of us are drilling down onto our marketing budget. We are seeing everything twice, but we're making sure we cut once, because incremental changes every day is not going to help anyone. We need to take a strategic call and we need to go down a path. So as a marketer, I'm seeing a huge impact. I think even you can see it. You can hardly see any goods being peddled to you either via ATL or by BTL. Frankly, there's no medium which can reach out to you as effectively today. Newspapers have gone down. I mean, even the e-newspapers you hardly see any ads in them. Outdoors are finished. Digital we've seen some very interesting insights. So I track digital very closely. The CPMs have reduced by 30 to 40%, which is good news for a marketer. But the CPAs, which is what actually runs the business, have increased by around 20 to 25%. So net, there is a huge impact, and also the pay reduced. It's not like I was signing up 1,000 new users. I can get 10,000 more users today. Groceries has been doing well, no doubt. I mean, because there's a last mile problem. So groceries doing well from that point.
Absolutely. As far as, of course, SEM is concerned, even I have a couple of insights which basically we have observed. It's that the cost of ads on most of the popular platforms, at least for businesses that are engaging in these advertising on digital platforms, they have reduced a lot, but there is so much of unsold inventory at the same time, because people, of course, there's no liquidity in the market. So it's such a unique situation that people find themselves in right now. Of course, there are some who have been reaping the benefits at this time, making use of the reduced cost of advertising on digital, but not everybody is that lucky, I guess.
Yeah, you see all the big spenders are out, right? Auto is out, travel is out, restaurants are out. So the big spenders are out. Uh, FMCDs, the Samsungs of the world, when they're not spending. So there's a lot of inventory up for grabs. But again, I said, I mean, even if you bid on that inventory, conversions are not that great. So the conversion cost still is pretty high, because you're going to see the users also buckling down, right? Uh, in every third or fourth household, there's someone who's taken a salary cut, or there's someone who's lost his job. So, or there's someone who's expecting that one of the two may happen. So people are also trying to buckle down and see how they want to live out the next 3 to 4 months. So consumer behavior has changed in a huge way by this one particular event. Uh, One is people are realizing they don't need that much to live. So the marketer's job is becoming that much more difficult. Second is, for people are realizing how fragile their health is, and how fleeting this whole life is. So a lot of them are taking to social media to connect with family, friends, and community, and discuss stuff like this. If you see the conversations around these particular topics, it's gone up pretty high. Folks are discovering the love for cooking all over again, and uh, just by the virtue of at least in the cities that delivery is a bit of a problem, and you've seen the food delivery in India, though it's fallen. In the US, it's increased. Uh, and behind all this is this the whole trauma that is happening in terms of fragility of life, being able to continue your life as it is, and the amount of money that is going to be coming into the house.
Absolutely. Because of that interesting point that you mentioned about the industries that are doing well, I just wanted to follow up on that. Now, there have, of course, been some notable industries that have not done well. Auto has struggled. It has been struggling since the last couple of years. Now it's become even worse. Even the auto spare parts industry is really struggling. Travel and tourism has been one
Yep.
of the major hits. Offline retail also, for
Mhm.
that matter, has of course struggled, and I probably foresee it to remain the same even for in the coming months. What are some of the outliers over here, Daman? Of course, you mentioned grocery, hyperlocal that has done well. Are there any other industries that are doing well right now?
So content and streaming is doing very well. Besides
Mhm,
this,
mhm.
and time spent on social media is being social media companies are doing pretty well, and gaming is doing very well. Even this one, there is a huge surge. Children did not go to school just to learn. Schools are also proxies for childcare. So education is also another which is doing pretty well. So we kind of realize that our core time, which we used to be productive, once that gets over, we need to fill it up with other things. We did not go to a restaurant to feed a hungry stomach. We went to the restaurants to experience. So a lot of time now is going into filling up with entertainment and the basic genres.
Absolutely. Another point is video conferencing apps. The success of Zoom has absolutely been incredible. I think couldn't have come at a better time for
Yeah, I don't know how I
companies
can
like
miss
Zoom.
that. We are on Zoom right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I
so
mean,
I was just kidding with someone that no one wants to do a phone call anymore. Everyone wants to do a Zoom call now. So,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. It's been pretty amazing in spite of all the privacy concerns that they have been hit with. I think it's pretty amazing that the company has managed to maintain the kind of service qualities they are known for, even at such massive scale. And I think that's something very notable. But
बिल्कुल.
I'm going to pick one point that you made, Daman, which has been on my mind for quite some time. Is you mentioned the
Mhm,
change of consumer behavior,
mhm,
and the way society functions as a whole has been deeply affected. And you have mentioned trauma being a very core part of something that has been guiding us or motivating us to do new things like be fit or connect with family. And of course, the trauma originates from the fact that there is this COVID-19 pandemic all around the world. Now there have been a lot of sane voices out there who have been saying that even after, let's say, the lockdown or the quarantine ends, uh, this is going to remain constant for a very long period of time, because this kind of trauma is again unprecedented. Nothing like this has ever happened, and it's changed consumer behavior for good. And this is going to have a huge economic impact in the coming days. Now, my question is, for an economic revival to actually happen, what kind of a timeline do you foresee?
Man, I would be joking if I tell you I knew. Frankly, none of us know how this is going to play out. I mean, frankly, this game gets over when there's a vaccine, right? At
Absolutely.
the end of the day, I mean, by till that time, we're going to have multiple waves, and there's going to be uh, frequent shutdowns. I think this is going to be a way of life for at least the next few months, the next quarter at
Hmm.
least.
Hmm.
Because I mean, besides the economic fallout, the human fallout is going to be huge, especially for a country like us. I think that's something we cannot afford, because if the population feels that the government is not taking adequate steps uh, in trying to save their lives, then the trust is finished. The trust devolves. So I think that's something which the government will have to balance between the economy uh, uh, and the consumers. But coming to what's going to happen when this thing comes, when life gets back to supposed normal, uh, I will see an initial spike in consumption, frankly, once things open up. And we are seeing signs of that in Korea, signs of that in China. People call it revenge shopping. I don't think it's that. I also think it's a lot of pent up demand. The fact that you're locked up in a house for a month, there are a lot of things that are broken down. There are a lot of things which need to be bought. Your school's textbooks need to be bought. So a lot of pent up demand and probably revenge shopping, because some luxury goods also did pretty well.
Eh,
But
I
that's going
love
to
the
be
fact
moment.
I love the fact that it's called revenge shopping. That's absolutely hilarious.
That's a term these days. Uh, but overall, I see three major shifts happening from where said. One is people are going to try to simplify their life. They'll want to eat less and buy less for a decent amount of time, because they now see that such things also give them happiness. So we'll see a bit of degrowth in consumption for the medium term. Second is a lot of folks are going to figure out that they've been consuming and putting too much time and effort into overconsumption.
Hmm.
So stuff like a lot of folks are going to probably take a step back from stuff like fast fashion, which is adding stress to the environment. Uh, um, and the third thing is a lot of, and which is basically a corollary to the second one, is a lot of folks will now understand how climate and nature is playing a role in their lives, because I mean we've seen such positive reports of
Yep.
rivers cleaning up and the animals taking over the jungles and the fish coming back. Uh, so a lot of folks are now going to get much more conscious about that. So brands cannot be very brash about things. They will have to speak a language which now resonates with the users going forward. The whole idea of engaging with them
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
also going to change.
Hmm. Hmm. That brings me to my next question. I'm glad you mentioned that, because there has been a lot of talk about what really constitutes an effective marketing strategy in the time of a pandemic. And
Okay.
my question is, again, coming back to something that nobody really knows, because there is no playbook that exists which says that 50 years ago a virus of a similar scale had affected people everywhere on earth, so therefore this is what brands did and they managed to see, proper growth or continued growth. Nothing like that really exists. So everything is going to be, of course, based on very logical reasoning, and the brands that have a good I would say finger on the pulse of let's say the nation or the consumers would probably be better off. So in your opinion, what is it that really constitutes an effective marketing strategy in these times?
See, the context changes, but the marketing first principles remain the same. So if I overlay the marketing first principles with the current context, I think there are three main things that we need to do. One is obviously marketers need to see, they need to talk to the CFOs and CEOs pretty closely and see how much capital is available first to execute the marketing and create a very tight budget with different scenarios. That is point number one. From a consumer side of things, there are two things which need to be done. One is, I think this is a time that brands need to be radically generous. And what I mean by this is, let's take an example of Zoom. When this happened, how did Zoom resonate itself with a lot of the consumers? It gave its service free of cost to schools, right? So that millions of students could come onto Zoom and use this platform to further their learning. An Indian example would be Geo, for example. Geo said that anyone, and it's predominantly prepaid. So Geo said anyone who's run out of the balance, they can continue to keep getting free incoming calls, right? Rather than not even getting incoming.
Mm-hmm.
So brands who have shown taken the generous peg, they will do pretty well, right? And talking about engagement, I think, isn't this what every brand wants? That even during times of a downturn, the customer keeps engaging with the brand. And what best engagement than to keep using the brand, right? That's the best engagement. And people talk about this, right? You and me are talking about Zoom today, that it's been given free to my kid. So that's one. Be radically generous on the brand side. The second is, I think brands should now evangelize the category and not just your own brand. Right? At this point in time, you don't go and say that my company is the best. You say our category is something which can help solve a problem for you.
Fantastic
Right?
point.
You take a broader outlook, and even in the past, I've seen brands which have done this. They've done well in the longer scheme of things. So, for example, we have seen a lot of collaboration happening between brands to be able to solve user problems and grow the category as a whole. For example, both Google and Apple have come together to create tech which will help ensure that we can do contact tracing. This is unprecedented, right?
Yep.
So stuff like this is which will help the whole category grow per se, which will drive mobility. And I think stuff like this is what leading brands are doing, and also a lot of innovative brands are doing and engaging and resonating with the customer, not engaging. So I think these are the three things: drill down on your marketing budget, be very generous, and evangelize the category and not just the brand.
Fantastic. Thank you for that insight. Uh, the whole idea of getting marketers and industry heavyweights such as yourself is to really get a fresh perspective. And I think I completely agree with the fact that the category itself is something that needs to come together, and brands, of course, do not need to get into the whole traditional game of one-upping each other. I completely agree. I couldn't agree anymore. Um, Now, of course, there is no rule book right now which says if you do X or Y or Z things, you are going to be very effective in terms of your marketing. Brands are, of course, doing a lot of things right now across the board. Some things that you might have resonated with, some things you might not have liked. What I was talking about was there is no clear playbook right now to winning the consumer's attention right now. Everyone is trying to do something or the other, engaging very regularly. I see uh, travel apps, OTAs right now sending push notifications about making face masks at home because, of course, nobody is booking tickets right now. Uh, I see food delivery apps now delivering groceries to people because now they're in essential items category, and I think that's a very interesting kind of switch that they have done in their product. But of course, nobody really knows who is winning right now. Is there any noticeable change that you have seen with respect to the engagement from consumer brands?
Yeah. So the simple thing is, if you open up any, so let's talk about digital brands, right? Digital B2C brands. If any app today which you used to regularly use, you will see the homepage has entirely changed for every app, and I mean every app. be it Zomato. Now they have above the scroll, they have allocated a significant amount of space about how they are driving hygiene,
Mm-hmm.
right? So also Swiggy.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at Amazon or Flipkart, they have very clearly stated that they are supporting the government in their initiative and not going ahead with things, but they are only going to open up essential services,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, you can just go on example after example, and you can see the kind of stuff that is happening. Paytm, for example, has pushed PM Care to right up front, and also the COVID insurance,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So the D2C brands have not only gotten contextual, but they have also transformed their services to be more relevant to the user at this point in time.
Yep. Absolutely.
Specifically talking about travel and tourism, yeah, that's an aberration. That's something which is very deep hit. And for them to be able to do something to be relevant to a user right now is just having a good content strategy coming out at this point
Mm-hmm.
in time.
Mm-hmm.
But because travel is such a rich content category,
Yep.
content category. But I think besides that, to be able to expect any transaction at this point in time would be wise from a travel company's point of view, because frankly, no one knows.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so net, what I wanted to say is a lot of the digital brands, they have contextualized their home screens to make themselves more relevant to the user today. It also means from a post install or a post acquisition funnel is your entire funnel changes now, right?
Yep.
Uh, your earlier funnel of purchase and checkout is going to be very different from what it is happening as of today.
Absolutely.
The mix of products and services sold are also going to change. So as a marketer, if I have to benchmark the current funnel, I don't have anything to benchmark it with the earlier funnel,
Exactly.
and I hope that marketers don't benchmark the new funnel with the
Exactly.
with this particular month.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a quick offshoot to what you just mentioned. Now, there has been this one recurring theme that I keep coming across all the time, and I am glad you mentioned context being very important right now. Most of the brands that have been doing exceptional user engagement in the past, before COVID even existed, they had very sharp insights with respect to the consumers that they were targeting, with respect to the very targeting itself, with respect to the user engagement channels. They had a very set, or rather, a very unique, curated kind of an agenda with which they were going about it. Their marketing strategy, that's their engagement strategy. Now, the one recurring theme that I keep coming across, at least in the initial days, was the fact that the engagement was highly humanized. There was this one recurring theme that I saw, which was empathy. All right. uh, Nobody was really trying to sell in the beginning. Now, do you think this is a trend which is going to continue even well beyond the current scenario where COVID's impact is so strong, or do you think it's going to die down and it'll probably become things will become back to normal after like 6 months or something?
While a lot of brands are doing it, and obviously the language you speak and the communication you have is quite contextual. You can't be talking about Diwali during a holy season. So yeah, empathy is there, and I think it's going to continue. But what is actually worrying me is almost sorry, not almost, a huge number of brands are using the same tonality. So to be able to distinguish one brand from the other, if I don't look at the brand, is quite difficult. Everyone starts with, I mean, I've shared a video also online. Everyone starts in the same way, and everyone is talking about we are in it together, and everyone is showing images of people clapping from the balconies to end the video. So I think brands need to start creating content which is true to themselves. Very few brands are doing that, and unfortunately, a lot of brands are sounding like each other right now.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
while it's going to tug a cord initially, but I don't think that's a sustainable strategy given how long we're going to be in this whole rut.
I completely agree, Daman. I think the kind of impact you're talking about, I think the evolution needs to happen. And you have mentioned that very few brands are doing it. Do you feel that any one single brand is doing really exceptional engagement while they're staying true to their brand image as well, and at the same time being very human, very contextual in their messaging?
Well, there are a ton of them, but again, I mean, I think that's a different forum for me to comment
No worries.
on specifically which brand is doing what. But I think I'll pass on this question for now because
No worries. No
मेरे
worries.
को
That's
ऐसे
all
याद
right.
नहीं आ रहा कुछ specifically.
That's all right. So I'll come very quickly to the point of user retention versus user acquisition, Dhawan. Now we are, of course, living in an age where uh, there is big funding and there are massive unicorns everywhere who are running away with their millions of dollars in the bank. And the one biggest focus for them is to capture as much of the market as possible because they have the bank to do it. But right now, things are a little different because liquidity is dead or dying, as we all know it. People are sitting tight with their money and nobody's willing to loosen up the purse. Big brands that used to be these giants are, of course, sealing up their purse strings as well. And they're saying, focus on breaking even right now. So, in such a scenario, equating growth with acquisition is going to be a very, very difficult task, and it's going to be a tall order because it's kind of a luxury right now to do big spending campaigns, do these big SEM campaigns, spend a lot on ads. So the question over here is, of course, is the tide shifting in the favor of user retention, and are brands now really recognizing the impact that retention can have with respect to long-term growth?
I think the sanity of focusing on retention being the new acquisition had already come in, I think, 12 months ago. The move fast and big things and growth at all costs, barring a couple of companies, I think everyone had figured out that that's not the way to move forward because that's not sustainable. And I won't say that retention has taken a big focus right now, but I
Mm-hmm.
think this tide was already there. The amount of effort that we put into retention is far more than the amount we put in acquisition today. And I think this shift has been happening for over 12 months now, or probably more. Uh, what has changed right now is yes, there's a lot of bandwidth that has been freed on the marketing team's mind from acquisition. So this gives me the time to also train up my team in all the retention strategies, folks who were just purely focused on user acquisition. So that's what's happening. There's more cross pollination of ideas uh, than what we used to do earlier when we had lesser time. A lot of our retention campaigns are broken, frankly, because, like I said, the funnel has changed. The user's priority has changed. So a lot of those earlier journeys and trigger campaigns have frankly been paused. In fact, what we've done now is we've changed the journeys and the trigger campaigns so that they are more relevant to the current context and the current user behavior. For example, at Milk Basket, the user would order quite frequently, right? North of 12 times a month. Now people are bunching up their orders because obviously they want less uh, uh, interaction with the human. So the user behavior has changed, the basket size has increased, so on and so forth. So the earlier retention campaigns and the earlier retention metrics will not matter right now. The
Mm-hmm.
KPIs themselves have moved in the positive sense, but if I would apply the same rules earlier, I can apply them now. But which is what a growth team typically does, right? You evolve as a company, and your user also evolves in the usage of your product and services. So
Mm-hmm.
your entire um, uh, uh, journeys and your campaigns, even they evolve with time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. I completely agree. I think the whole idea of retention being, let's say, the new acquisition right now generally stems from the fact that uh, acquisition is going to be something which is very difficult to kind of achieve. and there is a, at least in the coming 1 year or so, and I think the whole notion of, let's say, making more money or rather extracting more value from your users becomes a massive reality right now, which a lot of marketers and of course business owners are going to focus on, which is why my next question is going to be around engagement. How critical do you think is user engagement right now? And when I say user engagement, I mean the kind of communication that uh, brands leverage to keep their users happy, or to basically sell more value to the users. How important is user engagement going to be in the coming 1 year or so, while we are still reeling from the COVID impact?
So let's talk about user engagement for two kind of companies. One is companies which currently users are actively using, for example, grocery and streaming and games. We just spoke about that. The user engagement is pretty much there. The funnels have changed, the triggers have changed, the KPIs have changed, but for the better. Then let's talk about companies where the user is not interacting so much with the brand. Okay. For example, I'm not filling up petrol in my car right now, right? So much. Uh, we are not going out shopping. We're not going out to a restaurant. What does a brand do at times like this? At times like this, I think content is a very big strategy for driving engagement. A lot of brands are coming up with stellar content, and they're going above and beyond to create that kind of content which keeps the brand in mind, but they're not selling anything. They're not doing a force pitch, but they're talking about what really impacts the user.
Mhm.
I've seen brands even talk about mental health, which I see in a very positive light, because I mean it's still considered a taboo in a lot of areas in India, but brands have come out and spoken about that. So I think that kind of answers the question. You know, for brands that are doing well, they have kind of tweaked their engagement strategies, and brands that are not seeing purchases and interactions happening right now, they have they have completely changed the context and talking uh, about stuff which is more impactful and meaningful to the user.
Mhm.
These are the good examples that I'm giving you. A lot of brands I've seen have gone silent. Strangely, I don't understand why, because that's just like switching off the engine while the plane is flying. So best of luck to them.
Absolutely, I completely agree. I mean, I have noticed a couple of course, options or other apps that I have seen who have gone silent. But overall, I have seen a spike, a massive spike in the engagement from the apps that I, of course, use. And some of the messaging has been, of course, like you mentioned initially, it was all about tackling the coronavirus and how to basically continue to live a normal life even in these circumstances. Slowly and steadily, everybody started sounding the same, like you mentioned. But now I have started to see there have been some outliers who have been doing well, which brings me to the last question for the day, Daman, is
Hmm.
there are going to be some brands or some businesses that are probably going to die in the next 1 year or 18 months or 2 years or so. But there are also going to be some brands who are going to end up becoming legendary brands because of the way they handled this crisis or the way they functioned in this pandemic. What is that one important thing that will determine the success of brands in the long term, and which will become probably a Harvard case study in the years to come? What is that one factor that brands need to really ace?
I think again, being generous. I think this is the time for the brand to be really big and really reach out to the user. Um, Brands that are generous, brands that are solving a user's problem by being generous, are really going to create a differentiator for themselves, because uh, this is a time which the user will not forget about. I think we will talk about this
Yep.
for quite a number of years, and in those talks, you want the brand to give the aha moment to the
Hmm.
user,
Hmm.
and that will not be selling him a 50% extra chocolate bar. That will be by you know being generous to the user in terms of uh, giving him extra mask at home, or dialing down your service costs, or giving him something extra.
Okay,
So
above and
I think
beyond.
that is what is going to really
Mhm.
that's really going to resonate with the user, and it can't be trivial. Users are smart,
Yep,
right?
yep, yep.
It has to be something which is meaningful,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
I think every brand has an option to do
mhm,
that,
mhm,
right?
mhm, mhm.
uh, 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 while there are a lot of unknowns right now, brands don't know about the survival. And being generous doesn't cost you money every time. Okay, you can be generous with your actions, you can be generous with your words, with your thoughts, with your content, uh, and with your service and products, definitely.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Daman sir. That was a fantastic conversation, and thank you once again, Daman, for your time. And I hope you continue to stay safe, healthy.
Sure, man. Priyam, you do stay safe, and thanks for your time.